Hey guys, Maltha here once again, and for my last character of Delve, I decided that I would try and put together some of the strongest, sort of most overpowered mechanics, items, combos, ascendancies, all of that together and make a pretty strong character for both delving and endgame bossing in the form of this Scion Blade Vortex character. So Blade Vortex came out with a new microtransaction a couple of months ago, and I did want to play around with it, but I wasn't quite ready to do the overpowered shit that is Blade Vortex ever since the last one, which was Chieftain, Beeftain, Blade Vortex Pure Fire, and I did want to take another crack at Blade Vortex eventually. It felt the right time to do it at the end of the league here. For hopefully what I was going for was the final boss in Delve, which was All. Going to try and find him and then put together a strong character in hopes of taking him down. And I wanted to take my Blade Vortex character a slightly different direction, as I always do when making a new Blade Vortex, and this time I went Scion with full physical into mostly cold conversion and then a few other added bits of damage, but it's mostly cold damage. And having played the previous character of Blade Vortex on the Chieftain, I know that it had way more than enough damage for all the content in the game ever since Val Blade Vortex came into action, so I was aware that my character didn't really need too much damage from its ascendancy, and that's why I went Scion and wanted to go the Slayer Leech route, so that I could be just a bit more tanky, and also the Pathfinder Flask regeneration route, so that I could have a bit of extra attack and movement speed and then have sustainable flasks. That would make this a pretty strong boss contender and hopefully be able to take on All, which up till this point I had not seen anything of, knew nothing about, and had kept myself in the dark with. So it was going to be a fresh run at All, and I thought, well, this seems like a good character to be able to take it on. What resulted was then quite possibly my best version of Blade Vortex to date. Not necessarily the most damage, but it is the most versatile in terms of taking on content in deep delves and also endgame bosses. I ended up speccing into Mind Over Matter, though you won't see that in most of this video, but for most of the character's life up to level 92, I was pure life with some hatred and Herald of Ice on my mana reservation, doing shitloads of damage, pretty damn tanky, good survivability, good clear speed, and insane boss damage and viability there. So with this character, I then had the option of increasing my defense even further by speccing into Mind Over Matter, getting a whole bunch more life, defenses, other various things and flasks and all that, if I needed it when taking on a particularly tough All, which I had no idea what they would do. Once I did come across such a very tough All, I did respec into being even more tanky, but up until that point, I didn't need any more from my character than what it currently had. About 6k life, Lore Weave, Wise Oak, Fortifies, all of that. That was more than enough for 450 depth delves. Uber Elders non-stop, chain farming that shit, not a problem. You can see that Blade Vortex is still as good as ever, not really in any sort of doubt at this point, especially with Vile Blade Vortex out there. The clear speed is pretty respectable, and the Slayer Leech life node there is super good for your sustain, and then we do have our flasks up almost all of the time. Once we get into the actual endgame boss single target, it just becomes pretty stupid. You swap out a couple of gems and you have some of the dumbest single target available while being a pretty tanky character, and the Blade Vortex playstyle is very up close and personal in your face, so it does go towards your benefit to kill the enemies pretty damn instantly. But in this situation, we have some good sustain and some good life regen from our life leech nodes with the Slayer. So you can see that the Chimera ads here and Chimera himself are an absolute joke for this character, whereas some of my previous, let's say, casting characters would really struggle with this sort of thing because the smoke phase is just unrelenting since you don't have that much infinite sustain. Dodging this type of stuff can be tough on other characters as well, while you have a pretty quick whirling blades here, and as I mentioned, it really just pays off to be able to basically one-shot, insta-kill, global these phases, and Blade Vortex was the kind of thing that just didn't really seem like it needed a Vile skill, but there it is. And combo Vile Blade Vortex with Vile Righteous Fire and most of the tier 16s don't really get to exist likewise with Uber Elder. So it is a clutch, or a crutch rather, not a clutch, for most of these fights. You don't need it, it's just a novelty to be able to make them disappear within a split second. So for most of the Uber Elder fight, you don't really have to use any of the Valblade Vortex, but whenever you want to just push an instant phase and not even be near the bosses while doing so, then it becomes extremely useful to be able to just drop that Valblade Vortex. As you can see, it just insta-gibs the Shaper and Elder at the last part of the phase. And just for a little bit of context of how much harder the all I was facing compared to everything else in the game was, absolutely face rolled so many Uber Elders. This is the all I had, and yeah, I took a lot of attempts to learn this and eventually get it down, which I will show you in a completely separate video to this one. But for now, let's get into how I built this character. So here is the character level 92 Scion called All Out of Time. And it did go on a bit of a journey. So as I said, I did build this character for the goal of killing an all, or finding and killing an all, because I had not yet, 3 months into this league, found an all. I did grab this character, get him to some deeper depths, and start going to 450 sort of category and just straight down and hope to find whatever all I could. What I ended up finding was this one that had area, onslaught, fire, cold, and it is really quite a challenge, which is exactly what I was hoping to not do, not go down and find some stupid all, which is why a lot of the time I was going across at about the 300 category and just going sideways and shit. That never happened, so I had to just go straight down to increase my chances. In any case, it is a Scion level 92 called All Out of Time, and it did go on quite a journey of fine-tuning and how I actually went ahead and made it. So to begin with, I did just grab a lore weave, I got it 6-linked and valved it on stream and managed to get +1 level of socketed gems, which is pretty insane. So that's the only real reason I'm using an Empower here, level 4 mind you, which I made myself. I think actually all of my gear is self-crafted, but I digress. So the idea was that I was going to build around some cheese mechanics and gear, specifically lore weave for the 80 all res, triple balanced wise oak for the huge amount of reduction in elemental damage, slayer leech so that I could get huge amounts of leech that just kept carrying over, and then as well as that a bit of extra area and cull, and then pathfinder, which like I said, maintains your flasks, also gives you a bit of attack, movement speed, and some penetration, but it's really there for your flask sustain, because as I mentioned, Blade Vortex itself has stupid damage. Even with basically investing nothing into my ascendancies for damage, I end up pulling out 2.6 million Blade Vortex DPS, and that is just off of pure Blade Vortex itself, not Valblade Vortex, and that is with Mind Over Matter, which is the most defensive sort of setup I could have possibly built here. Because originally I had a foil, I had a shield, so I was running something like this. I had a Hatred Watcher's Eye, so I was doing, well, let's not say that. I was doing that, for example, with a Hatred Watcher's Eye, and I was reserving full mana up till this point. And you can still do it that way, and I enjoyed playing that up to level 92. Eventually, when I wanted to fine-tune the character a bit more, I got rid of my Hatred Watcher's Eye because I was no longer pure cold anymore. I was doing plenty of other elements when I crafted 2 stat sticks, so I got fire cold here, I got fire and lightning here, I got cold over here, and then a lot of the time I wasn't even running hatred. Specifically against all, I wasn't actually running hatred anymore, and I was only running Herald of Ice for clearing some of these delves, leaving all of that mana unreserved so that I could be super tanky, even then going against all, taking out my Herald of Ice. So it's just full unreserved mana, shitloads of life, really good leech, really good mana leech thanks to Warlord's Mark, and then just a shitload of damage. And this is the microtransaction we built around. I should mention right now that it's a new kind of microtransaction, and it gives you additional sort of graphics to your Blade Vortex per stage, and it's also dependent on area. So when I have a lot of area, as you can see here, you can then actually see this next spinning blade, saw blade type thing. If you don't have that type of area, you're not going to see these next level graphics. So bear in mind, if you go for this MTX, you do need some area to see all of the full layout. So a lot of the time, yeah, not even running area. it's pretty complicated to get into what I ended up changing and didn't changing. The final setup, I think, is the strongest version of the setup, and that's running 2 stat sticks, 1 foil so that I can whirling blade very comfortably, and 1 scepter so that I can get some good caster mods, some double damage type stuff. Chaos spammed this at best, but it can get better, obviously. Can even do, you know, everything with worse, because as you saw, my damage was pretty goddamn stupid. So yep, 2 stat sticks I think is the right move, and then having mind over matter spec'd in here, doing some mana, but for the most part just running Herald of Ice for a bit of clear. If you really want, you can run your Hatred for some of the boss fights that you can see I still do that on, because I know that I'm not going to be taking huge amounts of damage, so mind over matter won't be too uncomfortable, but that's basically our reservations there. Hatred and Herald of Ice, and mind over matter otherwise if you want to just be super tanky, but like I mentioned, it's really not entirely necessary. It's up to you how defensive or how offensive you can make this type of a character. Besides that, the character just, you know, gets a bit of duration. That goes a long way to making your Blade Vortex enjoyable on a Blade Vortex character, as well as the efficacy support. So make sure you get some duration somewhere. Some good cast speed helps a lot so that you can actually enjoy the Blade Vortex playstyle. And then, of course, with Scion, I start in the little ranger area just for some life, attack speed, and some dexterity, which helps out, but it's not too big a boon otherwise. So I did go pretty all out with the crafting on this character by making my own stat sticks, made my own belt, when the important thing here was life recovery rate, because that helps our just life leech go that much harder. I did then make my own ring, which got Warlord's Mark on hit. That's where we get our life leech and our mana leech from, so it's pretty damn important. I did make my own helm. It's a piece of shit, but whatever. Made my own boots, lots of resists and life and movement speed. And the amulet I actually ended up buying for about 1 exalt. Nothing too special there, you're just looking for extra cold or extra lightning, and then crit multi and a bit of stats if you can get them. I'm also running Hrim Sorrow gloves, bought a pair of corrupted ones that have spell crit, and then you convert half of your Blade Vortex into cold that way. The rest of my damage at the moment isn't really converted, but you can see there's a pretty big spread of triple elemental, and that's where triple balancing a Wise Oak really comes into becoming powerful, because if you triple balance it, you get the triple penetration and the triple damage reduction. And then we run all these flasks, and originally I was running a Quicksilver with shield charge with this shield, but I ended up swapping to Whirling Blades strictly so that I could drop my Quicksilver and start running an Atziri Flask. The Pantheons I ended up running for the most part with Soul of Solaris and Soul of Yugel. However, you can do Soul of Arakali with the buffed Arachnoxia if you run Blood Rage at the same time and have a cast when damage taken Immortal Call setup. Then every time you have that go off, you take a brief pause in the damage over time you're taking, and that triggers this recovery of life rate, which means your Slayer Leech is going to be more effective. So a lot of the time I do run that, but when I'm going up against All and Uber Elder, this is probably a safer bet. So we're running that and that. And that's probably about all I need to say about the character for now. It's pretty confusing, I'd say, if you're not well versed in this type of stuff, but if it's not your first Blade Vortex character, you know what's going on. You know that Blade Vortex is strong as all hell, and it doesn't particularly matter how you set it up, as long as you throw some currency at it, grab an Ascendancy, you're going to be just fine with Blade Vortex. The actual end setup that I probably should go over is Blade Vortex, Hypothermia, Efficacy. Those are probably the 3 staples. You then have Controlled Destruction, faster casting, and Empower. If you don't have a +1 Law Weave, which, let's be real, you don't, then you're probably not running an Empower. You're most likely running full-time Controlled Destruction, maybe Echo, maybe area subbing in conk over your area, maybe crit strikes, crit multi. You could even run Ellie Focus if you think you're not that into the shattering of those things, but I'd recommend playing around with that yourself in the path of building. You can see that there. If you take out the Empower level 4, it is a pretty big chunk of damage. You can supplement it with crit multi, for example, and not too big a deal. And then pretend we don't have +1 Law Weave. Oh no, 2.2 million damage. That's what you're looking at. So don't be fooled into thinking you need a +1 Law Weave. I just happened to Val mine, and what the hell, I'm going to use it for my last character, especially against the toughest boss in the game. Now, I will still leave you guys with a video of me versus Uber Elder at level 82, I think. My earliest and youngest Uber Elder ever on a character such as this one. I just wanted to jump into it as soon as I could to see if I could still do it. And that was the most challenging one I ended up actually doing, because the ones at level 90 plus were an absolute breeze. And the next video I show you will be this character versus all, which is safe to say an Uber all. So thank you very much for watching, guys. Hope you enjoyed this Blade Vortex character, and I'll see you next time.
Putrefy, rot, spoil, and fester.
Can more or less tank that, I guess. I have to remember to use Frostbomb.
Embrace my blizzard. Gaze into the abyss.
Oh, what is that lag?
Howl from the void.
Oh, that's not. Oh, there's a propagator up there. Did I pop the ball? No, those were both mine. What the fuck? I messed that up. Yeah, moved along with the fucking drop down shit, basically. Because I was trying to get away from the balls I just had to pop there. I'm gonna use Herald of Ash. I think it's probably better at this point anyway. Fuck knows. Don't know what the rat setup is there. Faster cast feels pretty good. Worth going for though, this early on. Definitely not too shabby. Triple hatred, please. I think I've earned it. Ah! Anger, clarity, clarity. What is it? Damage taken, recovery rate, anger. I'm sure there's some level of synergy there for some build. Extra fire with anger though. I mean, I guess Chieftain could wear the fuck out of this thing, right?